Hey YouTube, how are you doing? My name is Red Eye, everyone's favorite goblin. Today we are here to talk about Final Fantasy 1 Pixel Remaster. I'm gonna stop, I'm gonna drop the Pixel Remaster because it doesn't really matter that much in terms of how I felt about the game, so I'm just gonna call it Final Fantasy 1 from now on. Let's get that out of the way early on. So yeah, we finished Final Fantasy 1. It was an experience, and I mean, if you've known me for more than like 10 minutes, you probably know that I'm a huge fan of the Final Fantasy franchise. So, I mean, I'm probably never going to say no, I hated that game, it was terrible. Even if it was true, which it's not in this case. And I guess like a lot of you will expect some of the things I'm going to say here, because I think I brought up a lot of them throughout the playthrough itself. So assuming you watched the actual playthrough, then some of these thoughts will not be a surprise to you. Let's just put it that way. So yeah, let's jump right in. Let's get to the things I didn't like. And like, I'm by no way saying that just because I didn't like these things it makes it a bad game or it's less playable, or that I didn't enjoy it, because I did enjoy the game overall. You know, hashtag spoilers. But these are just like things that niggled at me while I was playing, and things that just didn't sit right with my, I don't know whether to say expectations or experience here. It's a bit of both, really. But yeah, okay. So the first thing I didn't like was the difficulty felt really weird, in that the start of the game felt super hard, and then as I kind of went along, it just got easier and easier. And I'm kind of wondering if that's like whether the game has like a flat difficulty. So a lot of games these days will like start off quite easy and then they'll sort of ramp upwards, so you end up with this like increasing difficulty as you go along. Some games get easier as you go along, so you have like a downward slant, but this one, it sort of felt like difficulty was fixed, and as you sort of progressed on, you sort of moved upwards, but the difficulty was still here. I don't know if that's intentional. I don't know if it was supposed to be harder and I somehow managed to just not get, like my power level wasn't quite matching up with where I was supposed to be difficulty wise. I'm not sure. Like, so the four fiends, the Lich, Marilith, what's the underwater guy called? Kraken and Tiamat. Like, they're like the big bads before the big bads. They're like the penultimate bads. That doesn't sound as good. But yeah, they're basically like set up as, you know, these are the things that are causing all of the problems in the game. And you'd expect them to be like, you know, fairly tough. And they just weren't. I think Lich was probably the hardest of them, and it's like the first one. And I don't know if that's just because after Lich I out-leveled everything or not, but yeah, it felt, the difficulty felt weird. And like I said, it might just be that because difficulty was like a fixed level and I like exceeded that level as my power level, and that might just be a relic of the way game design was done back in, you know, 1987, which is when Final Fantasy first came out. You know, it might just be like a relic of how game design was done in ye olde days. And it could just be a subjective thing. You know, I could have just experienced it differently from everyone else. So I don't know. But yeah, difficulty was something that definitely stood out as something I didn't really, it didn't gel with me. And the other thing, which I kind of hate to say, was the magic system. And it's not because magic had spell slots or anything like that, you know, because like that's basically just D&D in a game. It was more the fact that magic just felt super underwhelming. And like every other Final Fantasy game that I've played, magic is like this big, showy, boom, you kill stuff. Whereas in this, it was just like cast fire and you do like less than a melee attack did. You know, I think the Final Fantasy series like swung from melee being the star of the show to magic and, you know, cool shit like summons and whatever being the star of the show. And again, that might just be another artifact from the way things were designed back in those days. And you know, magic was supposed to be a supporting system, because really it didn't feel like attacking magic really had a whole lot of impact. The most impact that magic felt like it had was in healing spells and buffing my melee characters so they either hit harder or hit more. Like I said, that might be a design thing. It might be because our brains are now wired to think of things that are limited to being powerful, which is, again, you know, a game design thing that is now more common these days and may not have been in Yieldy times. I say Yieldy times, like, you know, the 80s was that long ago, but it really wasn't. But I don't know, maybe I just need to play other games from like the 70s and 80s to really dial in on how those games were designed and intended to be played. It could just be a thing that I'm not used to because, you know, I've only been playing games for 30 odd years. I don't know. But yeah, like I said at the start, although I'm saying I didn't like these things, they definitely didn't stop me liking the game or feeling that they made the game unplayable, because the game was really, really good. I did really enjoy the game. I felt it was really accessible, really playable, which I was kind of surprised about a little bit, because a lot of like early, specifically JRPGs, not so much Western RPGs, but a lot of like really early JRPGs were sort of incomprehensible and a little bit, you know, because you have the whole different mindset between Eastern and Western design and aesthetics. There was a lot of things that didn't translate well, and while this was in a time where, you know, localization was not the major focus of a port, it was more just get it working and sell it, and we'll fix. Well, I mean, they didn't really fix anything after that. It was just like, hey, get it made, we'll translate it, sell it. It's good, you know. So things I liked. I actually really liked the. I feel like calling it a story is a little bit over generous, because it wasn't like, it has a story, but it's not a story in terms of what we think of today when we say, you know, JRPG story. But yeah, the whole storyline and how you went around, you did the things to get the crystals, you killed the bosses, and then you went and you put the crystals in the thing, and then you did the final boss. And like, that design is classic. And the story of Final Fantasy 1 has influenced other Final Fantasy games throughout like the entire series, you know. Final Fantasy 3 basically has a similar storyline. Final Fantasy 9 borrows the storyline for its like final two discs. Um, Bravely Default 2, a game that I streamed recently, that is basically the same storyline as this, with some twists, but the sort of skeleton of this storyline has had such an impact on JRPG story design throughout the ages that it was awesome. um, I feel like I had nostalgia for something that I'd never played before, like backwards nostalgia. It was really weird to like play the game and go, oh man, this is awesome, and I feel like I've been here before. It was like a combination of nostalgia and deja vu. But yeah, like having played Final Fantasy 3 or bits of Final Fantasy 3 and obviously like 9 and other games along those lines, and seeing their storyline elements calling back to this game, the very first game in the series, it was really awesome. And I think I talked about this during the series, but like getting to Matoya's cave and just having that moment of holy shit, this is where Matoya's from. Because obviously I play Final Fantasy 14, and Master Matoya is a fairly, not like critically important character, but she's a fairly important character throughout the plot of like all of the expansions. She shows up in Heaven's Word, and she's still doing things in like Shadowbringers and Endwalker. Doesn't have so much to do with Stormblood, but and yeah, just seeing like that original cave, and then thinking about how they'd taken that design element and basically dropped it into 14, and it's like exactly the same. She's an old lady, she has a crystal ball or crystal eye thing. Admittedly, she's not blind in 14, but there are definite similarities. There's the magical brooms that go around, and yeah, it was brilliant. It was great. I loved it. And it felt like I was living through a piece of gaming history, really, and having done it after experiencing the things that influenced, I think made me appreciate it more. I'm not sure I would have appreciated this game as much as I do now had I played it for the first time, like back in the 80s. Quick hydration. Roasted bean juice, can't beat it. Okay, now obviously I cannot talk about a Final Fantasy game without talking about the music, because like goddamn, this series has fucking phenomenal music. Like I listen to a lot of the Final Fantasy music just as background music, and having now played through this game, and you can recognize a lot of the motifs and elements of songs that started out life in Final Fantasy 1, and they've sort of carried on through the series. One example is obviously the main theme. It's not exactly the same, but it is similar enough that you can tell each game stands alone. It's also tied together to say, hey, this is a Final Fantasy game. And you can see that also in things like the battle music and the victory music, and there are those elements that sort of swing throughout the whole series as a whole. Did I say whole enough in that sentence? No, whole. There we go. And yeah, there was this sense of the music really belonging to the places where it was used. So like the Chaos Temple, the background song for there has this sort of erratic, discordant, like high note, and then there's like a deeper harmony. And listening back to it after having finished the game and like seeing the purpose of the Chaos Temple, that fit just so well. or like the floating castle where we fight Tiamat. It has a very airy light theme, and the water temple has this very sort of strong, deep music to it that makes you like evokes the feelings of being underwater. So yeah, I've loved the music. Overall, like the game was great. I really enjoyed the game. Um, I'm not sure if I would have enjoyed potentially playing a different port of it more, because I know that the is it the GBA port or the I think it's the PSP port has a different magic system. I think that the spells are the same, but instead of having spell slots, it has more traditional MP. And like, I don't know, maybe I would have liked that better if it didn't feel like magic was so limited. Would I have disliked the magic system as much? I don't know. Maybe I'll try the PSP port and see how I feel. But yeah, it was really good to play the game and get to experience the start of the franchise that has had such an influence on me as like a gamer and a person as a whole. And I honestly, I would 100% recommend anyone that likes JRPGs plays the game. Because you'll start to see some of the, or you'll start to feel some of the things that I felt, and see how things that Final Fantasy did, you know, the game Final Fantasy, not the series Final Fantasy, things that were in this game that have then been iterated on and improved and put into other games. So yeah, I think it was a great game. I hope you all enjoyed my playthrough of it, and we will be back same time, same place next week with the start of Final Fantasy 2. Can't wait. Hope to see you there, and until then, I hope you all have fantastic days. Bye for now.